Alrighty, hello. Welcome to another OST review session. Today we are talking about standard 7.EE.3, still in the expressions and equations zone. We'll hop right in with question number one. It's from the spring 2017 OST. I forgot to mark it on here, but I should note, oh my goodness, I keep grabbing the wrong pencil, that a calculator was allowed for this question. So, I would anticipate if they gave you a question like this on your OST this year, that a calculator would be allowed. Michael has $317.89 in his bank account. He uses the money in his account to purchase new clothes for $48.73, lunch for $10.13, and a bike tire for $32.46. How much money does he have left after all of his purchases? So, at the end of the day, all you're realistically doing is you're taking the amount of money he starts with, which is $317.89. You're going to subtract out $48.73, then subtract out $10.13, then subtract out $32.46. You could do each of these by hand if you wanted to do so, but this question permits a calculator. So let's use it. 317.89, whoops, 0.89 minus 48.73 minus 10.1. Ooh, I hit the wrong button. I hit the exponent button. 10.13 minus 32.46. And all that gives you a grand total of $226.57. So you're just going to take that verbatim. That means exactly as it's written, $226.57. And that's your answer for number one. All right. Question number two. From the spring 2018 OST, calculator allowed. The distance of one lap around the school track is 1/4 of a mile. Sherry walks 5 laps around the track. How many more laps must Sherry walk to reach a total distance of 3.5 miles, 3.5 miles? So they're giving you fractions, and then giving you whole numbers, and then giving you decimals, and expecting you to work with it all. Okay, and that's fine. We can absolutely work with that if you wanted to do so. I'm just quickly checking if your calculator has an option to convert fraction to decimal. It does not look like it does, which would have made this question a lot easier. But, I mean, you could always just convert a fraction to a decimal by instead doing division, right? All right. So, first we need to think about how much 3.5 miles is. That's our first thought. Okay. Now, your calculator will do this for you if you needed to, because when you're working with fractions and decimals, you kind of want to be in the same area. So I'm going to go with fractions because I like fractions. So I can hit 3.5, right? Hit the equals button. And then I can hit Shift ABC, and that will convert it for me to an improper fraction. So it tells me that 3.5 is the same as 7/2. Okay? We're also starting with the fact that the school track is 1/4 of a mile, and Sherry has walked 5 laps. So let's do 1/4 times 5. Remember we talked about in a previous video, to do a whole number times a fraction, you put the whole number over 1, and then multiply across. 1 times 5 makes 5. 4 times 1 makes 4. So now we've seen that we have how much she's already walked and how much the total distance she wants to walk is. So we got to figure out how much we need to walk more. To do that, we're going to take our total distance that we want to walk, 7 over 2, and we're going to subtract out what we've already walked. Now, you can do this by hand by finding a least common denominator, of which it would be 4, but let's use the calculator, because the calculator, if used correctly, leads to a lot less errors. So we'll do 7 ABC 2 minus 5 ABC 4, and it'll leave us with 2 1/4, which we're again going to hit shift ABC to convert to an improper fraction. Why do I want to convert this to an improper fraction? Well, because this makes my life a lot easier. If I know that each lap is 1/4 and we need to walk 9/4, that means that I need to walk 9 more laps. And the problem is done. All right, we move to question number 3, Spring 2019 OST. Chris wrote an equation and the first step of his solution process as shown. 16 equals 12 minus 6x, and then the next step is 4 equals negative 6x. Which math operation did Chris apply in his first step? So, even if you don't know anything about solving an equation, you can kind of work this out. Whenever I'm asked to look at a step-by-step process and figure out what happened, and it's hilarious because this is something that I've literally just talked about with my 10th grade students, because we have to do what's called proofs, and we have to figure out what we're doing in a step-by-step process like this. And what I always tell them is what went missing, okay? This 16 changed to 4. Sure, it changed, but it didn't go missing. This 12 went missing. There was something there. There is no longer something there. That's the key. That's what you're looking for. What happened? 12 went away. How does it go away? Well, he divided 16 by 4. Nothing to do with anything. Doesn't involve the 12. He divided each side of the equation by 4. Nothing to do with anything. Doesn't involve the 12. So now we're left with either he added 12 or he subtracted 12 to each side of the equation. Well, what happens if you add 12? 12 plus 12 is 24. That doesn't make the 12 go away. That, in fact, makes the 12 bigger. So what he must have done to get the 12 to go away is subtract 12 from each side of the equation. And that's it. Calculator allowed? Not needed. All right, let's move to question 4 from the Spring 2022 OST. Calculator allowed. A company collects data on its employees. It finds that 20% of employees in each department are part-time and 80% are full-time. And each of the company's 4 departments has 45 employees. How many part-time and full-time employees does the company have? This is a tricky question. And I'm bringing that up that's a tricky question because this question tricked me when I actually did this before I started recording this video. And I'm only just now noticing the error that I made. So this is why you have to be careful with how you read things, okay? 20% of the employees are part-time, 80% are full-time, and there were 45 employees, okay? That's what I did. I found out what 20% of 45 was. Then I found out what 80% of 45 was, and I wrote it down. The problem is that there were 4 departments. So there's not 45 employees, there's 45 times 4 employees, which means there's actually 180 employees. You have to read and make sure that you're getting every bit of information from the problem. Because missing that one word of 4 ruined your entire answer. I can show you right now. This is my practice copy that I did before I started recording. 9 and 36. Here's what the answer actually is. First, we need to find 20% of 180. Okay? To find 20% of something, we have to convert percent form to decimal form. If you recall, in a previous video, I talked about how to convert from decimal form to percent form was to find a decimal point, move it 2 spots to the right, and that's your percentage. Here you need to find your decimal point, which if there is no decimal point, then it is at the right side. And you need to move it 2 spots to the left. 1, 2. 20% becomes 0.2. 80%, you grab your decimal, 1, 2. 80% becomes 0.8. So to find 20% of 180, you need to do 180 times 0.2. 180 times 0.2. That will give you 20% of 180, which, if you go into your calculator, 180 times 0.2 is 36. And then you could either do 180 minus 36, or you could just find 180 times 0.8, which is 144. And that's how many part-time and full-time employees the company has. You have to be paying attention to that, or you will make that mistake. And when you talk about how you only need 24 points to get proficient, this could easily be one of your 24. That would be a shame to lose one of your 24 on that. Question 5. From the Spring 2023 OST, calculator allowed. Jeremy places an order for 200 headsets from a supplier for his store. The cost of each headset is $44.50. Jeremy pays 25% of the total amount at the time of placing the order. He needs to pay the remaining amount at the time of delivery. What does he need to pay? Okay, so first we need to figure out how much the total amount is. He's ordering 200 headsets at a price of $44.50 each. So when you hear each, first thing I want you to think of is multiplication. Each should always lead you down the road of multiplication. 200 times 44.50 equals 8,900. So the total is $8,900. However, that is not our final answer, because he pays 25% of that at the time he placed the order. So we have to figure out what 25% of 8,900 is. Remember to find 25%. We're going to grab our decimal. We're going to convert it to decimal form. Move it 1, 2 over to the left. And that gives us 0.25. And we're going to find what 25% of 8,900 is. 8,900 times 0.25. Could we do this math? Yes, but it's in the calculator section. So let's do the calculator. 8,900 times 0.25. Bam, 2,225. Is that the answer? No. That's how much he paid when he placed the order. It says, what amount does Jeremy need to pay at the time of delivery? Well, he needs to pay what's left. So if the total was $8,900 and he's already paid $2,225, then the leftover would be if you subtract it. So 8,900 minus 2,225 equals 6,675. And that, and only that, is our final answer. All right. Whew. 2 more questions for this video. Let's get it done. Question 6 of the 2024 OST. Marshall spends $5.50 at the grocery store, and 4 times that amount at the bookstore, and he now has $7.75 left. So first thing I want you to do, $5.50. Take note. Then 4 times that amount. So find out what 4 times $5.50 is. 5.50 times 4 equals $22. So we now know that he spent $22 at the bookstore. He has $7.75 left. How much money did he have before he went to both stores? So this is total, how much money did he have before going to both stores? So all we're going to do is we're going to add this up. And again, this is a calculator aloud question. I lined it up. If you want to do it manually, I didn't line it up how you would line up this question. But we'll do 5.5 plus 22 plus 7.75 equals, woo, I was hitting divided by. Let's try this again. 5.50 plus 22 plus 7.75 equals $35.25. Is that one of our choices? Wow, hey, would you look at that? It is. You're done. All right. Last question of this video, question 7 from last year's OST. Calculator aloud. Mr. Zimmerman wants to hang a dry erase board in the center of a wall. The diagram shows the length of the wall and the dry erase board. How many feet from each end of the wall should the dry erase board be placed? Okay, so here's how you're going to do this. Okay, first, you have to figure out how much wall space we have. That means you need to figure out what's here and what's here. How do we do that? Well, we take the total amount of the wall, which is this, and we subtract out the amount that's being taken up by the whiteboard, which is this. So we do 10 3/4 minus 6 1/2. Okay? So let's put this into our calculator. 10. Ooh, actually, it's not going to let us do that, is it? This calculator doesn't let us do that, I don't think. Does it? Oh, yeah. Look at that, it does. So 10 ABC, 3 ABC, 4. That says 10 3/4 minus 6 1/2. Just keep hitting the ABC button. And that gives us 4 1/4. Okay? So 4 1/4, otherwise known as 17/4. So 4 1/4 feet. Now, excuse me, is that our answer? How many feet from each end of the wall should the dry erase board be placed. If you just throw in 4 1/4, you're going to be wrong, and here's why. If you throw in 4 1/4, 4 1/4 would be about here. Actually, probably a little bit further, about here, to the point where the dry erase board would be up against one of the walls. You need it to be in the middle. How do you get it in the middle? You divide that by 2. Because this and this should be the same if you want it perfectly in the middle. So how do you make it the same? You cut it in half. So 4 1/4 or 17/4, just hit divided by 2, 2 1/8, or 17/8. So it's either 2 1/8 or 17/8. I personally would put 2 1/8 because the question gives you mixed numbers at the beginning. So I would stick to mixed numbers, but you could put 17/8. Either way works. So that does it for this video. Thank you for watching. I hope it helped. If you have any questions, let me know.